Welcome to the latest episode of KapVista Klips. Today here we are with Colin from Moroku. How are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you? See, you're in Greece, somewhere sunny.
Good. Good. Yeah. We're doing it from location today. It's 7:30 a.m. in Greece. I'm currently in Crete, and that sun is hitting me. It's a different type of sun here. And for Colin knows this, but for those who didn't, we had to. This is a take two because I chipped my tooth in Greece. But highly recommends the Greek
Are you
dental
on the end of
system.
a
€50.
someone throwing plates, mate? Was it?
No. I was silly, I know, but I was trying to open up a prosecco bottle with my teeth. The little tab on the seal, I couldn't get it with my fingers because I've got big hands and tried to use my teeth and it chipped. So I wish there was a cool story like I was, smashing plates or I was getting to it. No, I was just silly. So that's my travels. But we're here to talk about you. So we're going to get into your story. I want to find out about you. I want to find out your experience, what got you to this point, and why Moroku. So start.
Yeah, lovely.
Tell us about you. Tell us about your background, what you've done, because you've got a really, really cool background.
No, well, thank you very much, Stanley. Nice to meet you, and thanks for the opportunity today. So I grew up in New Zealand. Always had a passion for things outdoors, tramping around the Southern Alps and doing all that. And so I went off to uni and did undergraduate and postgraduate degree in forestry. Ended up building a bunch of data models for my postgraduate thesis on the impact of management decisions on the economic outputs of forests. So, started playing around with computers and statistics and data models and all of those sorts of things, and packaged all of that up and sold it to the New Zealand Forestry Service before I'd even sort of, finished my professional degree, and then went off to the UK and to do my PhD there, and ran out of money, and had to end up, surviving as a young guy, and just there was no forests in London, or not enough to gather enough data around. So, but there were lots of banks, so I just ended up, writing software and doing some computer engineering, and and then before I knew it, it was this thing called the internet arrived, and a few mates and I got together and said, I think we can build some internet things.
Yeah.
All of the crypto at that point was out of the US and had been hobbled because crypto is a munition, actually, Daniel, right? It's regarded as a munition. And you can see that today, how important cybercrime is across warfare and stuff. So it's a good route. But as a result, all the crypto was hobbled. So you could only get weak strength crypto in Europe and everywhere else. So we built Europe's first strong full strength crypto stack, built Europe's first public certification authority for the issuance of digital certificates, and then went on to take the world's 20 largest banks to the internet on the trade finance side. That was amazing, and we sold that business to Netscape, and then came back down to the Pacific to run Netscape's Asia Pacific financial services business. That went real well. We did some cool things. We built BPay down here in Australia. We built, and then we sort of crossed over and also started doing some cool things. Built a little email service called Big Pond. Did a bunch of things, and then ended up at Microsoft running the Westpac account during the St. George Westpac merger, reverse takeover as it's affectionately known, and did internet banking again, and did that with Fiserv, and dropped in a bunch of things, and then went on to run Microsoft's data business here in Australia, and got to meet a whole bunch of other businesses. And that was actually after running Java in Australia as well, because obviously Netscape and Java, that whole thing came together, and ended up running Java for all of Australia, all the customers. So that was pretty neat. So and then sort of just kept going. So computing's been my thing, and then about 13 years ago, decided to just get back and do my own thing again, and built Moroku to kind of figure out how to enjoy myself doing what I love doing, which is solving problems with computing and data and tech and all those sorts of things. And now today, really, I've experimented with lots of things. But the heart of what Moroku is about today, Daniel, is this idea that because I've been doing internet banking for a long time everywhere for a lot of people, and try to figure out what was the next generation of it look like. And we've tried lots of things, and obviously with AI now,
Yeah.
that's the thing. But we're really this idea that we think that I think that banking's become banking and payments have both become highly commoditized. Right, it's pretty hard to differentiate the yellow one from the blue one from the red one. And so we think the differentiation is, how do you help customers? The first generation of digital banking is all about access and sort of convenience, but we think the next generation is always, more about helping customers thrive with their money. And, how do you really, and in that regard, the sort of short story is that money's not easy to use, right? You're off in Greece. You probably wish you had more, right? You probably wish you were spending differently or whatever. Money's really hard to use. There's very few people who are actually crushing it with their money. So therefore, money's not easy to use. Therefore, ease of use as a design paradigm is probably not good enough. But we reckon there's other modes and other systems and other ways that we can build digital platforms that help customers go out there and thrive with their money. And if we can do that, and we can do that for challenger banks and community banks and even some of the bigger banks, then maybe they'll build really decent franchises around helping people thrive, and we'll all win. So yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, perfect. So tell me your history and why a Moroku. So what is it? Give me the overview. It might be we've got time. Explain it.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much.
Because you're the pioneer of internet banking. You built BPay, which everybody uses, especially in Australia. Everybody uses BPay for payments. I think I've got most of my, maybe 80% of my payments come through on BPay. So you're the pioneer of internet banking. What's version 2 look like?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. So the kind of intimated, I think it is, trying to move away from. I think it'll end up being a game, sort of like a game of two halves. Right? I think there'll be some really big banks, and I think we kind of know who they are. Like JP Morgan's clearly, way out front. If you look at the spend of those banks, and some big four spending close to $1 billion a year on tech here in Australia. JP Morgan dwarfing that number, right? So I think JP's added a zero to that, right? So I think the last count, I think they were spending somewhere between $10 and $12 billion a year on tech, right? And so,
wow,
yes, which is astonishing amount of money. And so we kind of think that maybe there's only room. I think there's room for like 6 of those around the world, maybe 10, like some that sort of number, right? That will have massive amounts of compute power, massive amounts of balance sheet, and we'll kind of run these massive banking and payments pipes, and we'll kind of just swallow up that whole thing, and and so, but then on top of that, I think or hope or dream that there'll be kind of an explosion of hyper personalized experiences out front that kind of switch those pipes out as and when they need to, right? So if I want a better price, or I want better speed, or I want more reward, or whatever, then all those things will kind of switch in and out sort of on demand, right? And those banks will set themselves up with APIs and orchestration layers to facilitate that. But out the front of it, there'll be a whole lot of really small providers, right? And maybe to use an example, there'll be the bank that likes that banks Greek holidays, right? And I think that's a really interesting example, right? Is that you then turn up and go, well, okay, as I've travelled to Greece, how do I do what I love to do while I'm in Greece? And I might just have a specific banking experience for that, but it's very, very oriented around, in that instance, it would be, like FX would be important, and understanding the FX and how to make that work, figuring out payments rails I should be doing. Should I be doing standard bank rails? Should I be using crypto? Like, what should I be doing all along that way? And then there might be like the farmer out in the middle of Orange, out in the middle of regional New South Wales. Like how does he optimize his money around his cows and his cash flow and all of that stuff, and bank well in the seasons and all of those sorts of things. And so you sort of get this idea that there'll be these big, huge fat pipes, that'll be run by, I think, a dozen banks around the world, and they'll have all of them from stablecoin to cash and FX and all of that stuff, and they'll manage all of that stuff really, really well across securities as well as sort of standard assets. And then there'll just be this, I think there's this explosion of, increasingly personalized experiences that kind of help people to be really nail it. But in order to be able to support that sort of proliferation of many banks, there kind of needs to be a platform that supports them, right? There sort of needs to be, because they don't have $12 billion at hand to do all of the things that Jamie Dimon wants to do, right? Because he gets to play around with a lot of toys. They don't get that choice. So my vision, and I can't really help Jamie or any of those guys because they're kind of doing their thing. But I can build a platform for the regional bank out in Orange, New South Wales, or the bank that wants to bank, say, the teachers here in Australia, or the bank that wants to get after the Greek immigrant population in Australia, or the Māori population in Fiji, and all these sorts of things. And we think we can build an intelligent platform for those guys that allow them to get out front, really put their arms around their customers, reward them for loyalty and engagement and support, and being great with their money, and get close to them and really nuzzle up, and then behind them, use those fat pipes. So that's what we're building at Moroku, is a kind of a banking platform for challenger and community banks that allows them to get close to their customers and support them and embrace them and reward them for strong money habits, and to take advantage of this explosion of technology that we reckon we're pretty good at getting our hands around in terms of core banking and ledger and payment systems and user experiences, and then right in the middle of it, our game engine that is really set up to help customers sort of, thrive and be rewarded and engaged, for their effort across Einstein's idea, which is, time, space, and motion. So, what's the length of the relationship with the bank? That's time. What's the space of the relationship? Like, how much money and how much payments are they putting through with the bank? And are they doing that well? And is that making sense for them? As well as motion, which is the other Einstein's idea, or Newton's idea, actually, which is, that's all very interesting in terms of overall time and space. But what's actually going on right now in terms of momentum? Are they going forwards? Are they going backwards? Are they going sideways? They're getting better? Are they getting weaker? Like, what's actually going on? And then give them real-time sort of nudges and support for that behaviour, as well as far as it goes, the relationship with their own self and their money, but also with bank, and how sticky they're becoming, and just make sure they're rewarded for that, right? And these are the things that banks have largely been, okay at doing, but really not well. They've kind of had a crack at it, but only in terms of credit cards, really. You collect a few credit card points for your loyalty with your credit card provider. But if you think about how that's going on in terms of your relationship with the bank, no one's doing it well. In fact, most people aren't doing it at all well. And so it's not surprising that, the regulators coming in and enabling the great switch, because there's no stickiness, there's no loyalty. So, how do we do that in a digital environment? We think we've got a leg up there.
Banks are very disconnected from their customers, and surveys suggest that I can't remember the number, but it was a very, very low number and very low percentage of customers that are actually happy with their banks. There's no loyalty. People are switching. And at the same time, there's a cost of living crisis, but Commonwealth Bank just announced, a $10 billion profit, right? So there's this massive disconnect, and people are just not getting what they need from their bank.
That's right. And the banks have relied on the fact that changing banks hard, right? So you think about things like, direct debits and all of these things. I've set up all my BPay. I can't really be bothered moving, but what's happening, and the banks have relied on this for a long, long time, right? They spend a lot of money on customer acquisition and very little retention, because they know that once you've got the customer, they probably won't go anywhere, and you can kind of treat them as badly as you want. They probably won't go anywhere until you really upset them. But that's all changing now, particularly with the regulators, with things like open banking and bringing on some of these switching utilities, that it's going to become much easier to do that. And as well as that, particularly the millennials and the younger customer, Daniel, they're a lot more fickle, mate. I was thinking about this actually the other day. I watched the there's a great series on Netflix around, first of all the Cold War, and then recently the Vietnam War. And one of the things that came out of this, and I will just go here for a little bit because I think it's important, is that up until the Vietnam War, us humans, we respected our governments a lot, right? And so not only did we respect our governments, but we also respected the big institutions, right? We trusted them all. Up until about the time of the Vietnam War. And the Vietnam War was pivotal because it was during the Vietnam War, because of how badly the American government treated the American people, right? The Americans were like, you guys have been throwing us under the bus for way too long, right? And then we no longer trust you. And there was a pivotal moment that started to shift. And not only did the government started to lose that level of kind of authority, but so too do bigger organisations. You now fast forward that across sort of 50 years. Mate, there's so much disrespect for organisations and governments, and we're a lot more fickle. And what that means for the millennial population in particular is that if you don't treat people, they're like, mate, I'm going to download an app and change my banking, and I'm going to do it like that, because they just don't care. So if you're not on your money on ESG, you're not on your money on loyalty, you're not on your money on ethics, and you're not leading with this stuff on purpose, they're off. Right? They don't care. Right? You mean nothing to them.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole on that, the disconnect, distrust. I mean, COVID provided a massive shift where, the government was saying one thing, more politicians were saying one thing, doing
vax,
something
no vax,
different.
this vax, that vax, all that. Just distrust. Yeah. The only result of that was distrust.
Yeah, exactly. So distrust came out of it, and again for big business, big corporations. So I agree with you, and the younger generation, they have no loyalty. They don't have that ingrained into them that it.
And not only that, Daniel, but just to be made, the other thing that makes them different is that we've told them that we're burning the planet up, all right? We've told them all that climate change, the place is going to get smoked in no time, right? Unless we try. So they're not only do they lack trust, but they're very anxious, right? We've given them a lot of anxiety with Greta out the front doing her thing. They're all like, oh my God, Third World War and the planet's blowing up, right? We need to focus on this stuff. So we've made them very sensitive to ESG and ethics and a whole bunch of other things, which therefore is incumbent on the bigger providers to make sure that the message is coming through, not just on the brand, not just on the website, but into the very, very essence of the service experience. Very critical.
Okay, so you've built this platform. Tell us the milestones you've achieved.
Thank you very much. Let's go back. So I think, pivotal moment. Probably did a capital raise 2016, 2017 with Cuscal. Cuscal came on board as a seed founder or seed investor, cornerstoned the round, and that was fundamental. And so the pitch was, everything I've said, but the place we're going to start is around the kids. We think, we look at Dolomites in Australia and we think there's a digital version of that. And so we're going to build a white label digital banking app for this community challenger bank we're talking about. So the vision was always the same. We thought, let's start with the kids and let's build a unique proposition around that. So we did that, got half a dozen. We raised the money, raised just shy of $1 million then, and built Chore Scout, got half a dozen of the credit unions on board, and then ran that for like a year and a half, but then put it down because actually it turned out that children banking's value proposition, maybe obviously, but you've got to have the experience a little bit. It actually takes a long time to generate ROI, right? You take a 5-year-old, it's going to take 20 or 30 years before they take out their first mortgage, right? So you got to have to be in it, and you're going to have to make the strategic commitment. And
Commonwealth did that, and look at them.
Yeah, Commonwealth did that. Commonwealth did that back in 1928, and 100 years later, they've got the biggest franchise in Australia, and some people would say entirely because of Dolomites. So we thought, well, that's a good idea. Let's do it for everyone else. But no one could afford to wait for 80 to 100 years to play out. Everyone wanted it on the balance sheet at the end of the quarter, and it just wasn't working that quickly. Yeah. So we put it down. And then the digital banking thing happened. So the regulator announced the restricted ADI licenses to try and drive some innovation in Australia and build some digital banks. And we got pulled into deliver on at Vault, actually. And we spent most of the 18 months sort of, through that sort of, COVID phase, building out Vault Bank and did a lot of that, built the app and built the payments integration and digital services layer, and just spent a lot of time in there. That was pretty good. And then I think at that point we kind of, started to realise, okay, so now the idea is still the same, but we're transitioning out of children into millennials and youths and adult. And so, so I think we did some pretty cool things there. So that was I think the next big milestone. Then we kind of spent a couple of years after that. So sort of fast forward, sort of 21, 22. Spent some time with some monsters, right? So I spent some time with some some big fintechs and some big financial services companies globally, playing around with this idea. We built some virtual trading games. We built some next generation digital banking applications for a bunch of folk around the world, all largely in proof of concept. Trying to just get hold of this game engine and connect it up to, the pipes and do all of those sorts of things. And so, yeah, some wonderful experiences there, and some, brought on some of the, bigger brands around the world onto the platform and got some testing done. And then a couple of years ago, so then fast forward to sort of 2023, kind of went, actually, that's good. And we've learned a bunch of things. Actually, what we want to do is collapse all of those learnings, and then go back to this kind of credit union and challenger market. Because as I said, I think this whole idea about the sort of game of two halves kind of started to crystallize in my mind. And to be honest, I kind of was going to get crushed if I sort of went to the big banks, because there's not that much room, and they kind of like to play with the bigger providers. I was going to struggle, but I thought I could go out back to the challenger and the community banks and start, building this platform for them, and really get out and get on purpose for them, as I kind of described. So so then we launched that, and then we started building that platform out about 18 months ago, 2 years ago. Got our first customer on board, Laboratories Credit Union here in Australia. And through that process, we've kind of been trying to find our ideal kind of core banking partners to kind of, get us the integration into the banking system and stuff. So we've been sort of playing around with that. To sort of fast forward to where we've got now, LCU are out and they're flying. And we've got a healthy pipeline of some good engagement, some real time now, just in the middle of signing a few up now. Platforms in place. So we've got core integration layer done, game engine in, we've got mobile banking, we've got internet banking, we've got loan origination. So we've got the kind of core aspects that we need to have to sort of bring customers in and then start engaging them. And then we've got all the integration layers out to start wiring and banking payment systems. So I think that's
amazing. So you're raising capital. How much are you raising, and what's the use of funds for?
Raising $1 million, so 500 done, another 150 circled, so about 500 grand left. And use of funds really is to get 3 solid new logos on the website, right? Good use cases. And get that done. And that means kind of, as always, kind of 2 things: a bit of sales and marketing, but not much, because we've kind of got the main pipes there. We know who we're targeting, and it's pretty man-to-man marketing, really, if I was to be honest. But then just sort of invest heavily in those projects, right? So make sure that we, step up to the plate and really swing for the trees and knock them out the park. So be compelling on the economics as well as the value proposition for those clients. Overly invest in engineering and user experience and data and all the things that we want to do, and get that done. So that the time we get to sort of the end of February, we've got, a good 3 to 5 logos on the website. Use that investment to get that done, so that we can then probably do a Series A sometime, early next year, and then load the cannon up and have a big go.
Perfect. All right. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but I really like the background. You're an experienced operator. You've built some incredible tech over the last few decades, right? You've been at the forefront. You're an innovator, pioneer, and now you've built part 2. version 2, and you've got those customers on board that you've proved it. I think this is not two kids out of uni saying I think I can do something. This is a wealth of experience. You've been an innovator the whole way. You're doing the next big thing, right? I think that's what sets you apart. I think that the risk is mitigated from an investment point of view because it's not give me your money, I'm going to try something. This is we've been there, we've done it, we've proved it. We're proving the next thing. We've built it. We've got customers on board. Just it's now about growth. So
it feels.
I like I like the opportunity. I think this is solid. So if anybody's interested in finding out more, speaking to Colin, please reach out to my team. It's happy to have a chat, walk you through everything. But I like this opportunity. Thank you very much for jumping on. It's great to chat to you.
Oh, real pleasure, Daniel. And just reiterate some of those comments from Daniel. Any questions, please reach out to Daniel and the team, and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. And thanks for the opportunity to go out and make a difference.
Perfect. Bye.
Haere rā.